Good evening or good afternoon or whenever you're watching this program, and welcome to another exciting episode of Porch Talk. And have we got a treat for you tonight? I, of course, am Paul W. Marino. This lovely person to my left is Nancy something or other, who is joining us. I'm sorry, I'm only perfect. Is joining us from the Hoosick River Revival. And next to her is Judy, other or something, also from the Hoosick River Revival. And finally, to her left is Eugene Michaelenko,
See, he remembered
whose
my
name
name.
I have to get right, or else I'll be doing this show alone. So, ladies, what do you have to tell us? What's the news from the Hoosick River Revival?
Well, we are going to get to news, but we thought it might be good to just give a little background information. It's been a while since we've been on your show, and so we thought we'd start with who are we? And basically, we are...
Yes, your names would be very helpful.
Yes. So this is my Nancy is co-president of the board of directors, and her last name is Bullitt. I am founder. This was my crazy idea to see what we could do about these shoots, and my last name is Grinnell.
And what's your first name?
Judy.
Ah, thank you. That narrows things down, yes.
Okay, so we are a nonprofit organization, and I'm going to read to you a portion of our missions. So there's no question in your mind what we are doing. We're all volunteers, and we are dedicated to transforming the aging Hoosick River flood chutes using leading-edge engineering and naturalization measures to reduce flood risk and enhance climate resilience. We envision an attractive, accessible, healthy, flood-controlled river, which will enhance our downtown and the quality of life for all residents, businesses, and visitors. We will accomplish this through advocacy, education, hence we're here at our show, and action in partnership with the City of North Adams and other stakeholders. Do you have any questions?
Not
comments?
intelligent ones.
Okay, so why do we have these chutes? We have them because going back to the 1800s, I apologize, downtown North Adams has been devastated from time to time by very serious floods. And thanks to Paul, we have many pictures of flooding. Here's one, it says from the 1890s.
No, this is 1911. It's
Well-
the Eagle Mill 1911.
So we were mistaken with that title.
Yes, but I'll forgive you this once.
Okay.
But
It isn't-
if they look close here, hold that up a little higher, please. If you look here, you can see something. You can see stone walls. Because if you look at insurance maps of the pre-flood, there are blue lines running along the edges of the river. And you'd think, oh, that's because it's the river. Well, it's not. On an insurance map, blue means stone. And we did have low stone walls running alongside the river as it ran through downtown.
In order to keep the river in place, but probably
Yes.
to save people from flooding, except in serious storms. Well, maybe, I hope this is not wrong also, but this is Willow Dell in 1927.
Yes. That is one of my favorite flood pictures. This gives us a very mild idea of what that area looked like at the end of the last ice age. When this hill, where Drury High School was built up by flotsam thrown up there by the river as it roared around that corner.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. So Drury High School was there, but now the Coal Grove School is there.
That's right.
Right, okay.
Good.
Great. Well, in the 1940s, the city had had enough and said, the stones aren't working. We need to do something else. And they asked the federal government to come in. And the response was to do something like this on the South Branch. You'll see where it's green. The engineers call that a berm. And I bet a lot of you have been down to Knoll Field, because this is the area where we have berms that are about 10, 15, sometimes 20 feet high. And as the river enters what are flood chutes, we have what's called riprap. Those stones are called riprap. My guess is they are probably 3 times higher than the stones were, Paul, when the stones
yes,
were
easily.
on the side. But most of the river is not held in by berms and rocks. It is held in by stone walls and
Excuse me,
with
Cement.
concrete.
Concrete walls?
concrete, rather.
Yes.
Thank you. Concrete walls, and the bottom is 40 feet wide everywhere, and the sides range in height from 10 to 20 feet high, and in some cases on top of that, in order to really keep everybody out, there's barbed wire. And this is a picture, I think that's from behind City Hall. And here's another picture showing what the bottom of the flood chutes look like most of the time. We don't have very much water running in there. And as a result of the design of the chutes, not only is there very little water in there except during storms, but it is very hot in the summer, and there's nothing can grow at the bottom where the concrete is. So nothing lives in here. We do not have a healthy river. We do not have a river that fish like. They're very smart, those fish. They don't go in the chutes. They stop up Knoll Field, and then they stop at up at the Eclipse Mill Dam. But what prompted me to get interested in doing something is I had been places where they'd fix their rivers, which also had flooding problems, but they looked better, they looked prettier, they had different ways of keeping the water in. So the goal was make the river pretty. And we worked on that probably for about 3 to 4 years till we raised enough money so we had engineers come in and take a look at the flood chutes, and we learned that this was the 4th wall to have fallen. Before we even started, there were walls that were repaired, actually in Willow Dell, because that is the place where the river does the most damage. And so we shifted from just saying, oh, let's make it look good, to let's save the city from flooding. Because 4 years after that, no, it's more than that. that went down in 13, I think, and the next one was by the museum. And so we decided, well, we've got to work on this and try to make changes. One more thing happened that's of importance, and that is the city did research, and so did we. And what they were interested, what they learned is that without fixing the walls, the city would be in very, very serious trouble. And so that's what the city said, and this is in the 2019 or maybe 2020, what is the dates there? Yeah, 2019 and 2021 plans, that it was hazardous not to do anything. So next we have a picture of every place where we have not just fallen walls, but leaning walls. And the total is 5 walls have fallen, 3 in Willow Dell, 1 at Masmoka, and 1 across from what we now call Porches on River Street. But what's happening is, if you visualize the wall as looking like this, sort of going up, why don't you show that? And then we'll do it.
Actually, just do it with your hands.
Okay.
Because
all right.
this is what the walls look like now.
Yeah, right. So the walls look like this, and when a wall comes down, what happens is the river comes by this way, goes over that fallen wall, and starts seeping behind the adjacent walls.
If not ripping out.
Well, not yet,
Yeah.
but what is happening is where we have, both walls have had wall problems, the walls are leaning. And even without a fallen wall, if the wall is leaning, when we have high water, which we have had, that water seeps right behind. So we have 7 leaning and 5 that have fallen. Nancy, you want to take over on what, wait a minute, what was that last one? This one.
Yeah.
What the options are.
So with, I don't know if I can hold this up, but, so with what
I
the,
have every confidence in you.
Here, I'll hold it. And
I think the options that, facing the city are to do nothing, which we know is not going to be helpful because we have, the panels that have already fallen, the ones that have collapsed, and those that are leaning. And significantly, by the way, to see them from either looking down on them or, as I've been working at MoCA, to see what they look like from above. How far those panels have moved is stunning in a very short period of time. And so even without a storm being into the channel or sending water shooting through there, that's the other thing. The problem with the chutes is it is just that. It shoots the water through the city with such speed and ferocity, there's nothing to slow it down. So the choices are to do nothing, to take all the walls down, which is not feasible by any stretch, and to repair and replace or restore, revitalize the river. And so options would be to be able to build out the walls so that they are, instead of being upright and 90 degrees at the bottom, which is definitely not what a river does, is to look at the South Branch and see how the berms are slanted out to the side. Slow it down. Naturalize the river, restore it to a living structure or functional entity so that the wildlife can be restored, fishing can be restored, and allow for people to actually access the river and to be a part of that. So there's all sorts of economic growth that can happen because of that. There are different ways of doing that. There's terracing. There's also being able to take
Here, I'll put this
yeah,
up.
being able to
Yeah.
take steps and bring it down. I saw this in Australia, in Sydney, Darling Harbour, where they actually have terraces so that you can sit down by the river, and if the river is high, it just has its space and is allowed to build up, but then when the water levels go down, it's restored so that you can go back to it. But it's a living entity. Some of the others are by walkways. You know, you can use some of the barriers that we currently have, or the chutes that we have, but in some way be able to build them so that you have walkways that are along the river, allowing access again to the river.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah. So although the walls are still intact, there is a walkway that has been provided down below, close to the river, so that folks can actually access them. And so those are some of the important the point, or the thing that's important to realize, is that the very top of any changes or any modifications or beautifications, it's always about the flood management. That comes first. Safety of the city and what we are looking at in terms of being able to provide safety and minimizing the risk of floods, because we know that our climate has changed, the intensity of our storms, the frequencies of which we have to live with them is much greater. Given that the walls were built in the 50s, right, 40s and 50s, they're now past their expected life
Lifespan.
expectancy. Thank you. And so with the intensity of storms, we are now at greater risk if we choose to do nothing. And so we now have a safety concern for the city that needs to be addressed sooner than later.
One
Well,
other thing.
I remember when Irene came through, and for the first time in living memory, we saw the chutes filled to almost 100% capacity. Looked like it would have been fun to go down in an inner tube.
Too dangerous.
But the wave of panic that went through the city, oh, they just want to tear out the chutes and then we won't have any protection at all. And of course, we couldn't do that even if we wanted to, because the Corps of Engineers will not allow that. Any idea that we come up with has to satisfy the Army Corps of Engineers that it's providing sufficient flood protection.
Yep, that is their primary goal. And what's different now from 60, 70 years ago is they know different ways of saving cities from flooding. All the things, all the pictures that you just saw, those are from cities that are just like us. They had terrible, terrible floods, and the Corps of Engineers, working with the city government, as we are, worked out a way to save the city, but also to create something that's more attractive, more healthy.
Yeah.
And one of the things...
And they also know ways to address the health of the river.
Well, exactly. And one of the things, Nancy, you might talk about is what that stream, the low flow channel.
Oh, yeah. So in the rivers here, right, down in the South Branch, they have their low flow channel where, is that what you're talking about?
No, not the
sorry.
dam.
Oh, not the dam.
No, what they have done here, sorry.
Let me hold
What
this
they
for
have
you.
done here is, remember, the bottom is 40 feet wide. So that gives space for maybe a bike path, which they do in Denver and in San Antonio, maybe a walking path, bike path, but also they can cut out space in the bottom. They dig down 12 to 18 inches and make a path for the river that is about 8 to 10 feet wide. So you've got 10 feet maybe for a bike path, you've got grass, then you've got 10 feet for a low flow channel, and then you've got another 10 feet for more grass, so that it is more attractive to look at, and the fish can live in the low flow channel. So, you know, as I'm sure some of your viewers know, this area is very, very well known for cold water trout fishing. I've had people say to me, don't tell a lot of people, because they're catching trout this big.
Yeah.
I think it's release, though. I don't think they eat them, but I'm not sure about that. So, Nancy, you touched on the project benefits. Why don't I hold this up and you can...
Yeah, so
check.
some of the things that we talk about, the first, as you can see on the top of this slide or screenshot, is the very first thing that we are, as part of Hoosick River, working with the city and the Army Corps of Engineers, is flood damage control. That's first. Ecosystem restoration, meaning that we can restore the river so it becomes a living river again, where the sections that we have now that are cemented in, they cannot sustain life as we know it. Fish and wildlife, if you go to the South Branch, you have an opportunity to see what it's like to see some of the wildlife that lives down there, the ducks and the geese, and if they're there, then there has to be a food source. Quality of life, as the river runs through the city, being able to see and be a part of the river. And that's an important aspect, because we can then have recreational activities that can happen within the river, along the river, development with regard to accessing, and then also allowing to have even restaurant building or places to stay, so you get into economic development. And then cultural connections. We are so close to the, museum for one, being able to use the museum and as an example of being able to use the river as part of cultural experiences. We've had that with Ralph Brill when he did the lights in the river, which was fabulous. So there's all sorts of potential, but the biggest thing, the main thing, the first thing on that list is flood damage control. That's what we're after. Everything else comes after that, what we can do to make this a living structure and part of the downtown. It is such an integral part of the city. You can't go anywhere without crossing. In every direction, north, south, east, or west, you will cross the Hoosick River at one point over a bridge. And that's important. So, yeah.
Well, you know, when you were talking about ecosystem restoration, I started thinking tonight before the show, it would be interesting if they could eventually put in a fish ladder at the Eclipse Dam.
It's part of the discussion with the Corps
good.
already.
But you also have to make sure that the ladder is designed intelligently. And if you want to see what I mean, go to Windsor Jams, the old state park, which is now closed, but on the roadside of the river, there's a fish ladder there that no fish in the world can get to, because at the foot of the dam, there's a stretch of concrete that's a good 15 feet long. Yeah. And the only time that the fish ladder would be needed is in the summer when the dam is in use, because otherwise they take the railroad ties out and let the river flow. Fish can't get to it in breeding season.
Well, and that's a good point, because one of the things that I've been made more aware of, having been a part of this before and now again, is that when you're talking about how long it takes to do the research, why does it take that long? Because there are so many moving parts. It is a fluid system, and so it takes a lot of research to determine what is going to work best, not only for the flood management, but for the ecosystems, for restoration. What can we do to make that better? And so it takes a lot of time and money.
Speaking of dams, though, when the Corps came to visit in August, we took them on a bus tour. And we took them all the way up to the Beaver Mill and to the dam up there, which is privately owned, but it does affect the Hoosick River, and it does affect our state park, access to the park, which is undergoing a marvelous renovation. They have decided that, the Corps, that they are going to look at the Hoosick River as it comes in from Clarksburg. Not, in other words, we have up here the map of the river, which starts, the map of the river that has been engineered, starting at the Eclipse Mill, coming down River Street, and going just beyond Masmoka. And the South Branch from Hunter Foundry Road, coming in along Route 8 till it meets Masmoka. The Corps has decided it is important to look at all parts of the river. So the river
Including
coming in from
Adams.
the north starts in Clarksburg. Well, it doesn't start. The border is Clarksburg in Vermont. So that extreme north, and as far south as Adams, and as far heading west, all the way to the Williamstown line. I never remember the name of that street.
Ashton Ave.
No, beyond
Galvin.
Ashton Ave.
Galvin
Galvin
Road.
Road.
The Galvin Road.
Yeah.
And therefore, they are going to be looking at the low roll dams that you mentioned that are in there. You may have seen those in various places along the river. But the Eclipse Dam is the big one. The dam up at Beaver Mill is another big one. And
It's not even a dam anymore, it's more like a cliff.
it is, yeah. And actually, there are two. There's the Eclipse Dam and then the one before it. So this is going to be a much more comprehensive look at the safety issues in North Adams than we expected. It's gone from 2.5 miles, because if you look at all the red on that map, it's about 2.5 miles, the North Branch and the South Branch. We're now talking about 10 miles of river. So, what else can we talk about here? I think what else is, what can happen here? What have our engineers said are possibilities for us here? So these are some ideas from Willow Dell. It may be possible, given the way the river loops around, and yes, this is privately owned property, but that's part of the negotiation when we start talking with people in the community. Maybe they'd like to have a park there, or a welcome center there, or a restaurant there. And maybe, rather than a wall on both sides, we could have a slide down into the water for kids on the inside part. The other side needs to have a wall, for sure.
yes.
For sure, for sure. So that's an idea for Willow Dell.
Does the plan for having a water slide for the kids include getting them out of the river afterwards?
It depends how they're behaving.
Or is it, Here, don't want this one back.
No, right. And I want to emphasize, Nancy has mentioned it, but these are ideas. Nothing is planned. It is
Rather, nothing is set in stone right now.
Yes, nothing is set in
Or in
stone,
cement.
to use a word that we don't want to use. But in order for us to have learned what was possible, we had to hire engineers who do this all the time. And so they said, well, what kinds of things do you want? And we said, well, we'd like to be able to get into the river where possible. We'd like to be able to fish. We'd like to maybe have a concert along the side, to have some greenery. And so they put on their engineer hat and their recreation hat, and that's when they came up with ideas for us as a board to look at, for us to share with the community and say, and the very last thing we're going to talk about is, please get back in touch with us. But these are some of the ideas. So at South Branch, maybe rather than having it be straight, we could make it meander there below the berm, maybe have the berm not be quite so steep so people could get into it, and it would meander and be something that children could go into.
Yeah,
right now,
like a low-flow channel.
Exactly, exactly. And another idea for the South Branch is to actually have the river loop into the recreation area. We've gotten some negative feedback about that, and that's how we learn what you'd like, what you wouldn't like. And so this may not happen. It may be that the river meanders and we have a bike path where we now have the berm. Wouldn't that be perfect to connect with the Ashawiltacook right down by Line Street? But I love this one. Many people have said to me, we used to have ice skating rinks downtown. We don't have any. And so we shared that with the planners. And they said, nobody's playing baseball in the winter. Why don't we make that into a skating rink in the winter? So we may do that, as long as it's cold enough.
Yeah, I remember there used to be a small rink down at the end of Tyler Street. And neighborhood kids went skating there, enjoyed themselves.
Yeah.
Well, we used
Sure.
to, over in Greylock, there was one at Greylock where the T-ball fields are now. And we used to be there every day. You could go there from right after school, 2:30, 3 o'clock until dinner time, had to be home for dinner. And then at 6 o'clock, 6 to 9, you were able to skate. And we
Oh,
had
so it
lights.
was lit up?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
my
we had
goodness.
lights. We had a record player that played the music for us.
Yeah.
And as soon as you heard the music on, you were out the door faster than you could say boo. And so we spent many a night there all year. And and they had one at Knoll Field. They had one at River Street. I don't know if they had one at Kemp. They might have. I don't really know.
Kemp, that's pretty high up.
Yeah. But they had, the biggest one was at Knoll Field. That was huge, where the parking lot is now for the Steeple Cats. So I can remember sitting right next to what's the name of the school?
Mark Hopkins.
Is it Mark's?
No,
No.
it's.
Oh, no, that was a...
Haskins.
Haskins,
Yes,
yes, Haskins.
Right.
They used to have races, and I was with the kids that would race, and they would get medals. So there was a real community kind of effort, and the kids also, we all pitched in to flood the rinks. So kids back in the day had it was their responsibility to make that rink, like glass. So fond memories back in the day.
Fond memories.
Yeah, I mean, the potential for the river has many options, and I think having listened to what folks had said in some of our listening sessions last fall and into the winter was fabulous. Great creativity.
That's something I meant to ask about, is I went to a couple of them, but what kind of discussion was there?
At
Well-
the community meetings, you mean?
Yeah.
You mean, what did people say? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking? Well, some of the things that Nancy was talking about and that I just mentioned about people wanting quiet green space along the river, picnic tables, ping pong tables. I have been to Germany where my daughter had lived, and they have concrete ping pong tables up year round.
Ping pong.
Yes, It is the hottest thing. Kids, just the way you were talking about skating, kids, they have their own paddles.
Yeah.
Or they don't paddle and ball, but they are up there. It is a hoot.
I think the other thing that came out of those conversations were information was shared with the community from Hoosick River and some of the information that we had about what potential, but then folks had an opportunity to include their thoughts too, and those thoughts are given back to the Corps so that when discussions are had, the information provided by community members went to them as well. So it doesn't just get stuffed in an envelope, it's shared. And so I think it's important for people to know that community sessions and what people had to say.
He wants to know about the river. Sorry, go find your own river. There you go.
So I think it was great to see as many people come as we did. You know, I went to several, the biggest one being on River Street at the UNO Center. There were a lot of folks there that came.
Yep, and then we had, and let me just talk about those listening sessions in case you weren't aware of them or you couldn't get to them. First of all, we are going to be doing a couple more in the spring, when we will have some ideas from the Corps. The sessions we had this fall were basically, you tell us what you're thinking about. What would you like? And I'm just going to put this up because this, it can sit there. There. Can people see it? Probably.
Could you focus?
Or she can zoom in. Okay. So, thank you very much. So, people said to us all of these things. They wanted a healthier river. They wanted economic development. They want restaurants along the river. But in the spring, we will have some ideas from the Corps on how to modify the walls and what activities you could have with the different modifications. Some places they'll have steps, their recommendation is going to be steps down. In other places it'll be berms at more of an angle. Some places they'll say, sorry, we've got to have walls, both sides. I'm hoping that we can have a low flow channel everywhere, even where we have to have walls.
Yeah, so in a place where we have to have walls like this, we can actually have a channel in the middle that's deeper.
That's right. That's what we are hoping. The engineers have not put their 2 cents in yet. So, but the important thing is for us to have a wish list so that, because this is your river, it's your river, and therefore you need to tell us what you'd like, and it will happen as long as we can save the city. That's got to be the key thing.
One of the other things that we don't talk too much about when we're talking about these flood control chutes is also the bottom. We forget, and those are starting to erode like the walls.
Yes.
And so that to me is a concern, because if we continue to have these raging rivers through these cement channels, the risk of more collapse and more failure gets greater with each storm. And so I think it's been clear from our perspective, from the people of the city, their biggest concern is to maintain that flood management and to do better with that. So to do nothing is to just set us up for failure. And so we need the Corps and obviously the city being on board, which they are, to bring all of that to fruition with, again, the top being what do we do to maintain and to improve what we're dealing with. Because the storms are only going to get worse. They're not going to get easier.
One thing you didn't mention is we will be able to tube down the river.
Well, you can, actually now, you can access on Ashton Avenue, there is a launch over there to get into the river. I don't know how tubing would work if you, I mean, I would suppose if you can do kayak and canoe, why not tube?
Yeah.
You know?
I think if it's down 18 inches,
Yeah,
I don't know why
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
If the water's high enough as well, too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing, it would be more consistent with flow, right? If it's a low flow channel, you will always have water, and you'll always have living things. So, and including the two-legged variety, we would all like to be a part of that. So yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. So there, you have now opportunity to contact us if you have an idea or if you have a question. No, people can't call in because, right, this is live.
Actually, this is a call-in show. Where's our number, Joanne?
664.
No, that's,
No?
no, that's the time we have left.
No,
It's
right
at the
down
bottom.
there.
664
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, we
4408.
need to have it on the screen, though.
There it is. It is. She did it.
Yes, let's all scream.
Yeah. So please feel free to call in. However, should you not want to do that, the Hoosick, there's a telephone number for the Hoosick River Revival, which you can get on the website. You could send us a message on the website. And I'm listed in the phone book. I don't care. You may call me. It's all right.
I don't have a landline anymore, sorry.
Oh, you know what? I don't either.
Oh, so no phone book for you.
Sorry.
We'll take that back.
Well, we'll have to take it back.
If you Google your name, can we get your cell phone number?
I don't know.
We'll find out.
I don't know.
It's a
I
great
don't know
question.
about that.
I don't know about that.
So, what else, Paul?
Well-
What we talk about?
Pardon. I'm sorry. Something I think it's important to remember is when you go to one of the meetings or you email or phone in with an idea, it's important to remember that it doesn't end there.
Okay.
That
point.
is something, well, I'm sorry to bring in another organization, but that is something that I love about the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition. They spend the first half of the meeting introducing everyone and making announcements, and then the second half is devoted to their topic of discussion. And whatever they're discussing, the discussion doesn't end there. They ask people who are interested in this subject, come to our office on X day and X time, and we can continue this discussion. And a lot of things that they have done came out of those. The Summer Youth Basketball League came from that. Martin Luther King Day came from that. The neighborhood expos that we did for a long time all came from that. And anytime you call us with an idea for what could be done with the river, it's not going to end there. The organization is going to discuss it. They're going to bring it up with the engineers and with the Army Corps of Engineers, more engineers. And it is eventually going to be fruitful.
I think it's important to realize that and I touched on this a little bit ago, but the immense amount of work that has to be done is just, it is almost mind-boggling. And so if people, Judy's been doing this for 15 years now, and she has worked tirelessly over these 15 years to get the ball to where it is now in our court, so to speak, and be as close as we are with the Corps being actively involved more so now than ever. And they've actually been here to see what's happening. And so the important piece is to know that when you bring ideas, control, or concerns, yes, they will be looked at and listened to. You may not see physically any changes right away, but know that that thought or that concern or that idea has a place, and it's not going to just disappear.
We actually we have somebody taking minutes at the meetings, and those are written up, and they are recorded. They are on our website, and they are sent to the Corps as well. I'd like to bring up one other item, and that is, you mentioned the coalition. In November, the representatives from the people who own tourists, who are working very, very hard to get a bike path connected from where it ends in Williamstown into Mass MoCA, they were invited to speak at a coalition meeting. The people from MoCA, who have recently received a big grant to talk about transportation and mobility in the city, they were asked to speak, and so was the Hoosick River Revival. And the reason that happened is, as Nancy mentioned, everywhere you go, you bump into a river, a road, a railroad, and ideally, a bike path. So, and there are about 5 of us, representatives from each of those organizations, that are meeting monthly to make sure, because we don't want to create, let's say, a place in the river where there are going to be steps down, and that's where it might be best to have a bike path coming in. And MoCA is looking at where it might be, how to make the city a more walkable place. So we need to be working together on all 3 projects, so we make it a great place for everybody, not just bikers, not just people who like rivers, but everybody. And so I'm very excited about that. I think that's a nice change. We're all very fortunate. You know, the Department of Transportation is very involved with the bike path people, and the federal government, I can't remember what arm of the federal government has given money to MoCA. And here we are with the state, federal, and local people supporting a feasibility study. We haven't used that word, but the name that the federal government gives to the conversations that we're having with the Corps is a feasibility study. Find out what is feasible, what is possible to be done, given how fast the river comes down from Clarksburg, given where we have houses so close to the river. How are we going to deal with all of that?
And I think it's really important to realize that these 3 entities are working. It's a cohesive activity now, where you're not working in isolation, and the river is part of that connection, and we all overlap, and it is the river that pulls us all together. It's like this water mechanism. It's like, you know, it's magical to me. Anywhere you can get to it or be near it, it has just incredible feelings. There are paths that get you there. If you're over in Greylock and go toward the tourist area, you can access that river walk from the footbridge in Greylock. and it is a great walk. The South Branch, along that bank, I've taken my walking group down there, and they absolutely love it, especially in the spring and fall. It's just gorgeous down there. And so these are just
I
touching
did some
on-
snowshoeing
Yeah.
down there
Yeah.
a couple of times
Yeah.
when I was stupid enough to have snowshoes.
And I'd like to go there on a hot day in the summer to cool down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be
Right.
great to be able to get into the river. I mean, that's the thing, and making it a living entity again. So it's not about just revitalizing, in my opinion. It's reworking it. It's reconstructing. There's all these positive things that can happen, and they're all interconnected. It's rethinking what this river means to the community, because at one time it was about industry, and it isn't that anymore. So we need to be able to reinvent it, just like we're reinventing the city.
Yeah, I have a strange little story about my father. When he was a child, he and his brothers went to, well, his older brother anyway, went to the State Street School, which is actually an apartment house above State Street. And what's now Joe Wolf Field was then a dump, what one might call an unsanitary landfill. So some of the older boys had built a raft, and one of the older boys one day invited my father and his brother to go for a ride before school. So there they are, wafting down the river, and they passed under a bridge and saw their teacher walking up over. Oh, hello, Mrs. So-and-so, and she looked down at them, and then they ran into white water, and the older boy got scared and told them to lie down, and he manhandled the thing over to the shore where the truant officer was waiting. He grabbed the older kid by the ear and threw him into the car.
Oh.
So Dad and his brother got in under their own power, and they were taken back to the school where they were scolded. Oh, you were playing hooky, you naughty boys. And then she gave them the death sentence. She sent them home.
Yeah.
So the older kid said, well, this is no problem. Listen, we'll climb up on Coca-Cola Ledge, and when the kids come out from school to go home, we'll go home and no one will be the wiser. So that's what they did, and when they saw the kids coming out, they went home, not stopping to think that the kids were coming out for recess. So when they got home, my grandmother asked them, what's the matter? Oh, nothing. Nothing's the matter. No, nothing. Well, then finally, when the kids did get sent out from school, one of the neighborhood girls told her what had happened. And she started wailing on them. Well, she had asthma, really bad asthma. And about the time she was running out of steam, Grandpa got home and took over.
Oh, dear. Your poor father.
Yeah. And of course, I asked him when he told me this story, didn't anyone ask for your side? No.
He wasn't the big brother.
No.
Or the big boy. Well,
Well, of course, it was the way kids were raised then. If
Yeah.
the teacher said, you need to die, you need to die.
so I put up another series of suggestions for people.
And I need to
think
warn
about-
you, we have 3 minutes left.
Okay. Well, these are some of the things that you might think about and ask yourself and tell us. We even want to know if you say, you know what, don't touch them. The sad thing is we really don't have that option, as Nancy said. But please know we're not tearing down the walls and flooding the city. That is not our goal. Our goal is the walls are falling down, and we want to save the city.
Yeah, we want to be able to intervene before Mother Nature helps take them down for us, because she's already working really diligently, and we need to try to keep up with her. I think that's the, the key to remember, is that we are trying to, with all that we can, to try to prevent a catastrophic flood in the city.
Yeah.
And if you've ever go to any of the areas where you can see the river, whether it be after a storm or not, how fast that river comes down and how fast it travels, because there's nothing to stop it. So, yeah.
And of course, that's why a community in the Village Beautiful, that's why that flooded.
Oh,
The Spruces.
Spruces.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the water came down so fast, it hit Williamstown, and it needed somewhere to go besides where it was going, so it chewed through the berm and flooded the Spruces. And we have 1¼ minutes left. So I want to thank the both of you for coming tonight. If you ever want to come and be on the show again, let me know, and you will be welcome. And I'm sorry about forgetting your name, but it reminded me, didn't you do the human cannonball when we were in high school?
No.
No. Oh. Well, because if you did, that would be a good way to remember your name. All right. Nancy Cannonball. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
thank you, Judy. Thank you, Nancy, for coming.
Paul.
Thank you, Eugene, even though you didn't get to say much.
I was listening. It's always very good. I wanted to learn about this project, so
Oh, good.
I didn't need to say anything.
Well,
All right.
it's our pleasure, really.
Yes.
We like doing this kind of thing, and we'll do it again.
Thank you for watching. Yes, both of you. And, thank you, Joanne, for directing. And we will see you the first Friday in March. Have a great night.